They didn't even close the blinds. Cassandra sat in a glass conference room that resembled a translucent coffin, while ordinary Tuesday life went on around her. The UEX team had donuts for their birthday. The intern was struggling with the coffee machine. And in that room, like an exhibit in a museum, sat Cassandra Morgan, 30 years of experience in the Complos department. She watched as HR read the text from a piece of paper, as if she were ordering a burger and not ruining someone else's career. Due to budget optimization, said the woman from HR, her name was probably Jen or Jessica, we've decided to review your compensation package. From today, your salary is reduced by 60%. 60 is not 6. Neither unpaid leave nor compensation with a postcard marks a new stage in life. Just a blow to the head wrapped in beautiful words. Her vice president didn't even look up from his phone. He was scrolling through his feed while they were firing the woman who had once helped him get a job when the company was still small. Cassandra blinked once. She didn't ask him seriously, didn't cry or scream. The pain had been accumulating for years. Minor grievances, missed promotions. They erased hints from projects that the experience was outdated. HR handed over a yellow envelope. Everything is written down here. We've added information about transition support. Cassandra stood up. Not fast, no drama. Calmly and heavily, as if a rock were being lifted. I need time to study everything, she said. Her voice sounded firm, sharp. Of course, HR smiled. Sign and return by the end of the day tomorrow. The VP still hadn't looked up from the screen. He once called her reliable support at meetings, joked that Kaz was keeping the house from burning down, and now he was sitting. Link was scrolling. He was probably looking for a new high-profile candidate. Cassandra collected an envelope, a notepad, and a mug with the inscription sarcasm. One of my favors. It was a gift from a former analyst who now ran his own firm. She stopped at the door. Through the glass, she saw her team. Half of them didn't even notice her absence. The other half thought she was coming towards them. Cassandra always knew how to dissolve in usefulness. Today she dissolved in silence, and the silence turned out to be sharper than any scream. She didn't cry in the elevator, didn't call her sister, and didn't write to a friend. She came home, brewed, she sipped tea, sat down at the kitchen table, and opened her old work laptop. It was the only thing she still had left of the company. While the tea steeped, Cassandra accessed the company's shared archive. Decades of documents were stored there. Rules, laws, reports, financing. She typed one word, stakeholder. Outside, a garbage truck hissed as it compacted waste, and 203 results appeared on the screen. Cassandra wasn't distracted. Her fingers calmly began to leaf through the documents. Line after line. She wasn't looking for revenge. She was looking for a clue, one that others had forgotten, but not her. The year was 2012. The office still smelled of construction dust and bad coffee. Her desk was next to the server room, because back then, no one cared where you sat, as long as the system worked and the auditors didn't find fault. She was 37. She was straightforward, attentive, and already an inconvenience to those who liked to bend the rules. Behind her back, they called her a slowpoke. To her face, they asked Cass about the weekend, as if she wasn't the one uncovered 3 bogus contracts in 1 quarter. She irritated them not because she was wrong, but because she was almost always right. That same year, new investors came to the company, a Series B round. And with it, sharks in suits, talking in fashionable terms and readily sacrificing ethics for profit. Cassandra happened to be present at a late-night lawyer's call where the COO proposed adding flexible exit terms to the deal documents. Essentially, if a rich and scrupulous buyer were found, everything could be sold quickly, even if it meant burning down the infrastructure and burying the employees' shares. Cassandra remained almost silent on that call, but then wrote a 3-page memo. Long-term risks with unverified sale terms. No fluff, just clauses, links, and deadlines. She sent it to the lawyers, the CFO, and the CEO himself, who was still reading the letters himself at the time. 3 days later, she was called to a meeting with a representative of the board of directors and 2 outside lawyers. They clearly believed that Complos was a curse word. They didn't like her tone, and she didn't like their blindness. The conversation grew heated. Cassandra called the COO's plan Swiss cheese for corporate cannibalism. One of the lawyers, a graduate of a prestigious university, said with a forced smile that Cassandra simply didn't see the whole strategic picture. Her answer was different. "The picture is clear," Cassandra said. "You try to sell a house with termites and hope no one lifts the rug." That night, the board of directors met in closed session, and in the morning she received an invitation on her calendar. Discussion of amendments, protection of stakeholder interests. Cassandra showed up with a red pen and a stony face. And there it was, page 79 of the enormous agreement. Clause 17D. Protection of key stakeholders from hostile takeover. If someone tried to buy more than 30% of the shares without the company's consent, certain people, named back in the Series B funding round, had veto power as long as they were on the payroll. It was a sop to her. She fell silent. But she didn't argue or thank him. She simply read it 3 times, initialed it, and left. She printed out a copy at her desk, highlighted it with a blue marker, and hid it in a drawer behind a box of candy bars. She never mentioned that clause again. It was never brought up in meetings. New employees didn't know about it. The lawyers who wrote it had long since quit. The CFO who signed the document had gone on a bender and ruined the startup there. Cassandra outlived them all, but she didn't feel any better because people like her, quiet, reliable, without the star power, weren't supposed to have power, real power. They were supposed to be just insurance, a hedge, an invisible basis for other people's press releases, while her name remained hidden in the legal papers like a time bomb. She didn't do it out of pride, but out of fear, because she knew that someday someone like Jessica or Jen would come along and try to erase her value with a single Excel file and a fake smile. So Cassandra played the long game. She let them forget, made herself boring, and waited. It happened in the conference room with the lamp was flickering and the chair kept leaning to the left, as if it, too, was tired of corporate life. Cassandra arrived 5 minutes early, as always. She had notes, a project plan, and a detailed roadmap for the Complos migration for the 3rd quarter, already approved by the lawyers. Everything was clear, neat, without unnecessary risk. These were exactly the kinds of projects the company used to encourage. But now the new management decided that innovation means cutting corners and giving power to loud, unmerited people. The room filled slowly. The faces were bored, some hung over, some with smug smiles. Especially among those who, after the last reorganization, began to believe that leadership means inserting a word, agila, into every other sentence and nodding in silence. First on the agenda was her project, the one she was building. 3 quarters and was running exactly on budget. The vice president never looked at her. The vice president said, "We want to try a new approach to launching Complos. We think he needs some fresh energy." He turned to Mason. Mason was 28. He had the face of an MBA graduate, the kind of person who, when you speak loudly, is confident, and confident, it's already competence. He'd only been with the company for 7 months. And for 6 of those, he'd spent complaining about outdated systems and calling Cassandra's documents a fossilized archive. Mason smiled as if he'd been handed the keys to a car he didn't know how to drive. Mason will now be leading the project, the VP continued. "Cass, we want you to help with knowledge transfer. Knowledge transfer is a corporate word meaning. Train the replacement. Then leave." "Sure," Cassandra said evenly. The meeting moved on, but one junior manager leaned toward the person next to him and muttered loudly enough for Cassandra to hear. "She's like a legacy Glucket. Glucket, not a person, not an architect, not the one who put together half the system Complos, wrote 3 internal protocols that are still in progress, and once launched a risky integration that could have led to a federal audit. No, just glue the old code that's being tolerated until it's replaced with a beautiful pyrotechnic solution." Cassandra didn't turn her head, didn't squint, didn't answer, just clicked her pen twice. The first time to register the offense, the second to bury it. They then talked about metrics, marketing slogans, and even suggested a Complos hackathon, as if document review could be turned into a game. When the meeting ended, Mason patted her on the shoulder as if they were friends. "I can't wait to study your notes, Cass. They're like an encyclopedia." She nodded once, like someone who's noticed a piece of paper floating down a river. Then she returned to her office, wrote down the meeting's results, and sent a change request to Vitya. At 6:17 p.m., the office was already plunged into darkness. The blue light of her screen illuminated the empty space. Cassandra opened the locked drawer and pulled out a thin red folder marked personal copy. Tired, she found a bookmark with a paper clip and turned to item 17. Key participant protection. She ran her finger down the paragraph and stopped at her name. It was still there, still active, still hers. She didn't smile, didn't sigh, but something ancient flickered in her gaze. Not joy or revenge, but anticipation. She put the folder away, turned off the monitor, and stepped out into the quiet of the evening office. The kind of silence where you can hear the blood rushing in your ears. A hollow sound, she thought. Let's see what happens if I pull it out. She had a fake email. She had created it once during a scandal with a contractor who had botched 3 security checks and tried to disappear by erasing the data. Back then, she had created the address as a secret channel for internal escalation. She'd never used it. Until that evening, the login was a simple string of letters and numbers. The password was something no one would guess. Her late father's favorite lure, plus the number of her first working laptop. She logged in from a hotel lobby just 3 blocks from home. She'd left her phone at home. She'd bought Kahlua with cash so as not to leave a trace. The cursor blinked in the letterbox for a long time. She wasn't writing a confession. This wasn't a denunciation, and it wasn't revenge. It was more of a nudge, a little air into a smoldering fire. The recipient, Elyard, was responding. On paper, he was a rival, but not the kind to act like a robot from Link. Elyard was practical, dangerous, and respected true talent. A few years ago, Cassandra had ruined a sloppy deal with his company. In response, he'd sent a bottle of whiskey and a postcard. If we can't win, at least let's be honest. For a real complice. She kept the card. Today, she wrote slowly and precisely, without embellishment. The subject line, difficulties are imminent. Elliot, if I were you, I'd be staring into our hallways right now. New management, a lot of noise, little order. It's not sabotage, but the doors won't stay open forever. Check last quarter's reports and compare them with public statements. If your team is hungry, the window of opportunity is closing. No names, no attachments, nothing that can't be explained as a simple exchange of opinions between old rivals. She hit send and closed her laptop. Outside, the warm, humid air was sticky against her skin. Old streetlights buzzed in the hotel parking lot. Somewhere a bottle slammed and a chorus of curses rang out. Cassandra didn't turn around. In the car, she looked at her watch. 2,142 minutes. In the office, the Slacknells were already silent. Myson had most likely just left, smelling of deodorant and self-confidence. Jessica was probably posting photos from the HR seminar with the caption like Lattice Grit. None of them saw the bones of the company. She did. On the way home, she deliberately drove past the glass office of her competitors. Their logo shone from above, confident and clean. She imagined Ellie sitting in a chair, reading her email and frowning, although in reality, he was smiling. People like him don't waste time guessing. They act. Cassandra didn't break anything. She simply sped up the clock. The cracks were already there. Mason had no plan. Weepy was an empty suit with a podcast mania. The lawyers were afraid of their own email. The company was slowly crumbling under the guise of business casual. She just pushed the avalanche forward and left. There was nothing in the email at home. She didn't expect an answer. She unplugged the modem, put the laptop in a drawer, poured herself some water. No whiskey, no toast. Just a heavy, necessary silence. Cassandra didn't believe in fires. She believed in cracks, and today she whispered into one of them. Now all that was left was to wait for the shaking to begin. At 7:06 a.m., her phone vibrated twice on the kitchen counter. Cassandra was buttering toast, not scrolling through her feed, not refreshing the news in a panic, just making breakfast as always. Calmly, carefully, a piece of bread, a thin strip of butter. Then she wiped her hands, unlocked her phone screen, and saw the headline. urgently announced a $400 million offer to buy Data Rift Inc. No need to click. The headline was enough. The deal was underway. Right on schedule. Cassandra placed the phone face down, turned off the toaster, and poured herself coffee. Black, no sugar or milk, just a hum and clarity. She went to the window, opened it slightly, and heard the morning sounds of the city, garbage trucks, distant sirens. Somewhere on the other side of town, Elliott Carr was already working 5 steps ahead, whispering to investors about strategic value, slipped quotes to journalists. First the numbers, then the lawyers, then the PR. And Cassandra just drank coffee. At 7:22, Slack turned into digital chaos. Channels exploded. In 3 minutes, 63 unread messages appeared on the CMPOS grid. Screenshots of headlines flew like confetti. Interns speculated about layoffs. Product managers pasted articles with panic emojis. The finance department closed its third. At 7:40, an email appeared in the inbox, an emergency general meeting. 830 minutes are mandatory for all managers. Cassandra took another sip. Bitter, perfect. She didn't text, didn't call, didn't panic, just dressed as always. Gray jacket, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked like an ordinary woman preparing for a budget report, not someone who holds a grenade under the negotiating table. By 8:29, on the 15th floor, the glass conference room was already occupied by nervous executives. The VP of product was whiter than paper. The CFO looked like he hadn't slept all night. The lawyer was whispering hastily to her assistant and fiddling with a thick folder. And CEO Michael Erfenwick, the same one who once told Forbes that people are the most renewable resource, stood at the head of the table like a man slapped in the face by God himself. "Let's begin," he said, clearing his throat. This morning, Arnd made a public offer to acquire Data Rift for $400 million. Hostile, unexpected, planned. He paused. No one blinked. "We don't consider this a serious threat. We are considering defensive steps. Our fundamentals are strong." Cassandra cleared her throat quietly. Clear, precise. The CEO gave her an irritated look and continued. "We consider this a publicity stunt, an attempt to attract market attention." And then, from the corner of the room, a strategist whispered. They mentioned Cassandra by name. There was silence. What? Fenwick turned around slowly. In the Aches article, they listed her department as one of the operational problems that Arden played on. The statement said, "The old Complos system created under Cassandra Morgan is exactly the kind of management we want to scale." For a moment, something in the room trembled. Fenwick's jaw tensed. Cassandra calmly took another sip. "I see," he said, trying to keep a straight face. "It's just PR, just to sow doubt in our minds." The lawyer finally spoke. They filed a letter to CC. "It's serious. There's a clause in the bylaws that will trigger if they go over the 30% threshold. We're a long way from that yet." "Correct," Fenwick replied sharply. "But let's not speculate. We're looking for a white knight, perhaps a restructuring. The board of directors will meet this afternoon." He glanced around the room, as if searching for the culprit. His gaze settled on Cassandra and lingered a little longer. "Cass, I hope you didn't have any information about this." She met his gaze calmly. "Nothing I'm obliged to reveal." A murmur passed through the room. The lawyer buried his face in the paper. Fenwick's smile twitched. "Good. Everyone is calm." Then Cassandra took a folded sheet of paper from the folder and placed it on the table. Without a word. On it was only the number 179, circled in red. The lawyers froze. "What is this?" Fenwick frowned, but there was no answer. Cassandra was never in a hurry. Her traps worked on their own. The war room was scheduled for 10 a.m. The meeting actually started at 10:27, as always with top managers who were rushing only to their own ruin. When Cassandra entered, the board was already covered in writing. Stock forecasts, poison pill schemes, defensive terms in all caps. Someone printed out Arden's letter and circled the phrases in red, as if they were a hostage note. A lawyer named Drill walked ahead. His eyes were darting, and there was too much decal on. He muttered, "We need to activate the blocking procedures, or at least trigger the deferral clause. There must be something in the Series B terms. We've already checked," the CFO squeezed out, all drenched in sweat. There is no automatic blocking until they take a controlling stake. Now, they have 18%, the strategist said. According to rumors, it will be 22% by the end of the week. Hedge funds are selling fast. Fenwick slammed his palm on the table. Not hard, but enough to let everyone know who was in charge. There must be a block. There is something in the charter. Why do we even pay outside lawyers? Silence fell over the room. And suddenly, from the far end of the room, Megan, a junior associate who was still putting up post-it notes to remember how to edit PDFs, quietly spoke up. I think there is something. All heads turned to her. Sorry, I was going through the old Series B files, the ones we saved before we moved to Google Drive, and I found one clause. It's not in the board's summary, Megan said quietly. It's in the original investor terms. Page 79. Subsection, Key Participant Veto Rights. The lawyers froze. Stratek frowned. Fenwick narrowed his eyes. What did it say? Megan swallowed, looked at the printout, where everything was highlighted in yellow marker. If a hostile takeover brings the shareholding above 30%, the company is required to obtain written consent from a key participant. His decision is binding and stronger than the will of the board of directors. And there's only one name on there. She looked up. Cassandra Morgan. The room went silent. Fenwick blinked, then gave a short, awkward laugh. No, that's a mistake. That clause was symbolic. Just a concession. No, Megan shook her head. It's still in effect. I triple-checked it. It's never been revoked. Cassandra's name is still on the documents. Legally. Now her veto can scuttle the deal or force the board to renegotiate the terms on her terms. Cassandra sat quietly, her hands folded, her face expressionless. Only the hum of the lamps could be heard in the room. Fenwick looked at her for the first time truly. Not as a leader, not as part of the old system, but as a detonator. Is that you? His voice wavered. Cassandra inclined her head slightly, nodding almost imperceptibly. It was always me. Without the frown, without the triumphant tone, just the precision of a surgeon. Fenwick's mouth opened, but no words came. The head of strategy dropped her pen. The CFO exhaled loudly, like a deflating balloon. Cassandra let the silence stretch, letting the meanings settle like turbidity at the bottom of a vessel. In that moment, a crack ran through the hierarchy. The board could pose, the CEO could get angry, the lawyer could come up with wording. But this point had always been there. She saw how they forgot, how they became self-assured. And now they remembered, now they saw. The room smelled of old money and fresh panic. 12 chairs, 12 faces, a mixture of privilege, fear, and denial. Some knew her name. Even fewer remembered how many years she had been there. Most thought this was another meeting where someone drew diagrams on a whiteboard until the anxiety subsided. But Cassandra walked in without a lawyer, without a prepared speech, only with a leather briefcase, a laptop, and the weight of 30 years of silent power. She sat at the end of the table, in the place where lawyers usually sit, or where no one dared ask her to move. The chief legal officer, Daryl, cleared his throat. That's what executives do when they don't know whether they're going to be fired, sued, or thanked. Morgan had been invited at the request of the board. In light of new revelations, her position gives her special powers in the current takeover situation. Special powers. As subtly put, she has you by the throat and decides whether to squeeze or not. Fenwick sat in the center, twitching like a man who suddenly realized there had been a third player in his chess game all along, and that she had used his queen as a coaster. Cassandra opened the folder and clicked her pen. The room fell silent. No theatrics, she said. I didn't come to brag. I'm here because you ran out of time. Several board members fidgeted. One former banker folded his hands as if about to bless the sacrament. Cassandra ignored him. There are 3 paths, she continued. None are easy, but all are fair. She held out a single sheet of paper. No logo, no formality. Just 3 points. Option 1. Accept the deal. Ardent completes the acquisition. The current management team will be replaced. The stock will be diluted. The company will completely absorb the culture and structure within a year. My price for not answering is $1.4 billion. Pure, quickly, shamefully. Sell the house and let others repair the ruins. Option 2. Resist. Judicial blocking. Search for a white knight or a poison pill. Delay the inevitable for 6 months. Risk of shareholder lawsuits and regulatory scrutiny. Losses of about $85 million. Set the house on fire, claim it was an accident, and hope the smoke suffocates the enemy first. Option 3. Negotiations. Ardent suspends the purchase and renegotiates the terms. I become a temporary management intermediary. The board is renewed. The CEO leaves. I give up my veto power, but under the condition of control. New capital structure. 2.5% of shares for preserving the culture. Term 90 days. You buy time, stabilize the soil, begin to rebuild under control but with trust. She looked up. I am not making demands. I'm making an offer. No theater, no hammer blows. Only Cassandra calmly laid out the only lifeboat in the storm in which they've driven us in. The banker cleared his throat. And you're suggesting we oversee the process ourselves? I'll report directly to the board. Not the CEO, not HR, not your LinkedIn team. I have direct access. Complete transparency. The lawyer whispered to a colleague. She's building a structure we should have built 10 years ago. Fenwick turned pale and remained silent. He understood his role was almost played. There was a long pause. There was no vote, but no objections either because Cassandra didn't plunge a knife. She simply showed who was already bleeding. Real power doesn't need fireworks. It needs clarity. And in this room, everyone had long forgotten what that was. Except Cassandra Morgan. By Friday morning, the letters that resembled obituaries began arriving. The first was an internal notice announcing a change in leadership. That same text, a euphemism, edited by 3 lawyers and a PR intern crying in the toilet. The letter read, effective today, Michael Urbanvik is stepping down as CEO of Tatar Incorporated. This decision reflects our commitment to shareholder confidence and the long-term stability of the company. They didn't write fired, they wrote transition. They didn't say he burned trust like fuel, but wrote a new vision. The photo of him smiling, arms crossed, was taken before the deal fell through. Then the board voted, unanimously, the decision. Cassandra Morgan becomes the interim management representative with the right to change the control and reporting system. Everything takes effect immediately. No introductory weeks. Just get behind the wheel and fix it. A new contract. Just 5 pages, shorter than in 2012. The salary was returned in full with a recalculation. They also added 2.5% of the shares for achieving the goals for culture and stability, the goals that Cassandra herself set. And most importantly, the choice of the new director of Complas will be hers alone. No coordination with the old bosses. No more convenient people who treat control like an after-work club. She will choose a person with character, someone who believes. Comms is not a department, but the foundation of the company. And here is the most important thing. Ardent's offer to buy the company for $400 million fell apart in 2 days after these changes. Eli Otkar simply withdrew the application. No statements, just a quiet entry in SEAC and 1 letter from Cassandra. Congratulations. I didn't think they'd finally entrust management to someone who knew how to keep the engine running. The war ended not with an explosion, but with a simple accounting restatement and rearranging parking spaces. On Friday, they held a farewell party for Fenwick. A banner, sandwiches, a short speech from a sales guy who had never spoken to him. He held on, but didn't look at Cassandra. She didn't show up. She was busy rewriting the rules for new directors. Now, every year, everyone will have to confirm that they are obligated to follow the company's bylaws. Her name will be there, too. After that, the board reconvened. This time, no one was nervous. The chairman said bluntly, "You've stabilized us." Cassandra just nodded slightly. No applause. She didn't need one. She had a task calendar and a new office on the floor above where I was sitting earlier. The chairman stood up, almost awkwardly. "Thank you." Cassandra looked around the room. A week ago, she had been barely remembered here. Now everything revolved around her. She nodded again, took the folder, and left. Her steps were even, her face calm. But inside, the silence was clear and powerful. Her rise wasn't due to shouting or fighting. The ground simply shifted from under the feet of others, and she remained standing. On the 17th floor, The carpet was new, soft. It smelled of lemon polish and fresh paint, as if the company wanted to pretend that 2 days ago it hadn't been on the brink of collapse. Cassandra exited the elevator with a small cardboard box. Not all her things, just the most important things. A folder, a notebook, a photo with her brother in the park, both wearing stupid, oversized badges from that long-ago field trip that everyone remembered but no one discussed. She walked past HR calmly. Jessie Jin met her gaze and immediately looked away. Not because of work, but because shame doesn't hold well next to consequences. Cassandra didn't stop. Let her feel awkward. At the end of the hall, a sign was already hanging on the door. Rosanna Morgan Interim Governance. The name came first. She opened the door. The office was spacious, with windows overlooking the city. Cars honked below, buses sighed at intersections, and life went on as usual. Cassandra carefully laid out her things, a folder in the corner of the desk, a notepad nearby, a photo turned toward the window. No extra monitors, no chaos. Only order and silence. She stood by the window and looked out at the city. Towers, cranes, flashing lights on the roofs. It all seemed eternal. But she knew the structure was held together not by concrete, but by the memory and labor of people who don't forget. She quietly said, "Insignificant, yes." She turned, sat down, and opened her laptop. Ahead were audits, contracts, new tasks. From now on, her name would be on every document.